All right, so real quick story time. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
So, a couple of weeks ago, I woke up fine. I wasn't sick or anything, right? And I want to say like around an hour in, like leading to the show, I started getting like this tickle in my throat.
Oh, no.
Then my voice was getting raspy.
Yeah.
And I had I forget who was my guest, but they were coming from South. So I want to say, was it TiVo? Shouts to TiVo. It was someone coming from the South. It was either TiVo or Zeke, because Zeke's out in West Boca.
Oh, dang, that's far.
So I don't remember who it was, but all I remember was it was 6 o'clock. I'm in my house. I'm getting ready. Mm-hmm. I'm eating something because I don't like, coming in with an empty stomach. So, we got to eat.
You don't get lightheaded.
Right. So I'm like, all right, I'm eating. And then I'm just like going,
oh no.
Every 15 seconds, I'm like,
yeah.
I'm like, all right, whatever. I'm gonna make some tea because I always keep all kinds of teas. Do you guys keep teas at home?
No, I need tea because I was sick like 3 weeks ago, and tea would have came.
Bro,
in clutch.
I'm stocked up with teas, and ever since COVID, I started doing that. So now it just became a thing because I never used to do that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, so it was
dry season or whatever season that you're in, it gets pretty treacherous out there because the world is what the world is. The world is a fallen world. Yeah. And there's a lot of junk out there that we shouldn't be exposing ourselves to. But
oh, it popped up.
It popped up. That's crazy.
That's weird.
That is weird. So you guys, that episode that you guys were hearing was episode 48. So if you haven't seen that episode, go ahead and watch it. Do me a favor.
Solid episode.
Yeah. But what was I gonna say? So
you were talking about
heartbreak. Yes, my throat, right? and I was getting really frustrated because I already had scheduled my guest.
Yeah.
I think it was either TiVo or Zeke.
Yeah.
And to get those guys to come out is a challenge because they have very, 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 very busy schedules. So I'm like, no, I have to really just kind of, push it, push myself to do this. And I'm in the car and I'm literally like, my throat was like,
oh, no.
I was struggling. And I had my tea with me. I got in and I was just kind of praying and then kind of just calming down. And then I kept drinking my tea. Then I had a pulse and then I just let it sit for a while.
Yeah.
And we started a little late, but I got through the episode.
Oh,
but it was so nerve-wracking. Like I was literally having like
off.
anxiety and like it was taking me off my game because I was just like so preoccupied about my health and how I was going to sound on the mic and how the show was going to turn out. Like I was like projecting too far ahead, and I'm just like, yo, I need to just relax.
Yeah.
It's happening for a reason, obviously. So let's just do it.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. We just did it.
That's so awesome.
But yeah. So, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
That's good.
Thank you for coming through.
Yeah.
Because I was at your show, so it was only right to come in on my show and just talk some stuff. So this is Sarah. For those that don't know, she has her own podcast called Through the Waves.
Yep.
I'm wearing one of her shirts.
God is greater than the waves.
God is greater than the
Always.
waves. So she has cool merch. You guys can check her out at throughthewaves.com.
Yep.
She also has a YouTube, and she's on all digital platforms, and I will put those on the description below for you guys tuning in on YouTube. So yeah, Sarah's here so we could continue my series of talks that I've been having, and I kind of like dubbed it "Your Story Continues," and only because it does continue, even though we go through storms and trials and tribulations. We sometimes put a period where God puts a comma because we feel like our life is over, my life's in shambles, this isn't it, yada, yada, yada. So we just want to talk about that and stay in that vein, talk about personal experiences with the stuff that us young adults go through. We go through heartbreak, we go through traumas, we go through certain upbringings. We all come from different walks of life, so it's just cool to talk about with a female's perspective. So that's why I wanted to have these series of talks with a female perspective. So we'll jump in on on the topic and stuff like that. And what has been the theme early on the show with the last 3 gals that I had on was dating.
Okay.
Because dating has become such a buzzword in social media platforms, especially in the Christian community. It's been challenging for us Christians to be in this world of dating, especially when you're in your mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, and sometimes even in your mid to late 30s. It just gets challenging to be out there, putting yourself out there in the dating world.
Yeah, sure.
And it's no coincidences that you're seeing a lot more pastors like the Rich Wilkersons of the world, like the T.D. Jakes of the world, like the Michael Todds of the world, having literal full-blown sermons on relationship goals, on purity, on sexual immorality, on dating, when you know how you should court, how you should date, who's the leader, who's the submissive one, all these other different things that we as Christians have to navigate through, and it gets a little hazy and it gets a little gray sometimes because we're so influenced by the world because of social media, because of what we see on people's social medias, even on TV. I know younger generations are into reality TV, and what they see in reality TV, it's perceived to be reality, but it's not. That's not how you navigate through a relationship and stuff like that, because you see the debauchery that's out there, from the housewives of the world to the Kim Kardashians of the world, and all these all of it. So it gets challenging for a young male and female to kind of navigate through all that, and that's why you see all these pastors really hone down on that topic, and it could get challenging. It really is. So I know early on, before you met your knight in shining armor, JR. How was it your trajectory when you were dating and stuff like that?
Dating is hard. I actually was in a relationship pretty much all throughout high school. I was with someone for 8.5 years. I actually was engaged for 4 years. So I got engaged when I was 19. And then I wasn't even strong in my faith with God at this time. I was 23. And I just felt like it wasn't right. I felt like I needed to call off the wedding. So it was 6 months out. We were planning this wedding, and I just was I cannot marry this guy. I was no. And so it was the hardest thing to do because we were together for so long.
Right.
But I just knew it wasn't right, in my soul and in my heart and my spirit. And I called it off, and that was that. And then for me, that was something that was so bizarre and weird, because I went from 15 to 23 being in a relationship. So I knew nothing else. Right. So I was single for quite a while and did the partying thing and went out a lot and, did things that I shouldn't have. And met another guy a few years later, moved to Maryland with him, lived with him, and that was a very terrible relationship and, abusive in many ways. But the good thing that came out of that was I moved to Florida, and I really don't feel I'm sure God would have worked it out, but if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be here. And as much as I didn't want to go through that relationship, it brought me here. And then obviously I was never in another relationship before JR, but I dated people and saw people into the dating apps and whatever. And it was a hot mess. It was hard, and I was starting to lose hope, I'm am I just going to be single forever? I really just hate dating. It sucks, and people hurting you and people just not respecting you. And just I met JR, and it was so natural. We met as friends. And that was something that I never had with anybody. Everybody that I was with always wanted something out of me. And I'm sure JR probably wanted to do certain things. But he never disrespected me.
Which is important,
We just built this solid friendship. And I was wow, this is so different, but this is so great. And I could just tell that it was from God, you know, and everything moved so fast after that, because it was just meant to be.
And that's a great story, because I've heard other stories on the flip side of that. I've heard girls especially, who kind of grew up in the world, didn't really take the church and the faith and the relationship with God serious, and they were just living a worldly life. And you get so used to or accustomed to the men that are out there in the world, and then when they go through the trials and tribulations where they find themselves, and in the midst of finding themselves they find Jesus, and they have that big Jesus moment, then they start taking the faith and the spiritual journey serious. They start taking the relationship with God serious, and then they meet an actual Christian man, and because it's so foreign to them, they get scared.
I think I definitely pushed JR away when we first met.
You know, that knee-jerk reaction or that natural state of mind is basically pushing that person away because it's so foreign to them. So I just find it so funny that everything, and this, like outside of dating and outside of relationships, anything that is foreign to us, we tend to push back. Like, whoa, I'm not used to this.
We don't like change.
We're
creatures of habit.
Yes, that was just, you took the words right out of my mouth. But we are creatures of habit, and when we feel certain foreign things, we tend to push back, especially when we're so broken and we don't know what love really feels like or how love should really look like, because of maybe you came up from a broken home, maybe you had an abusive father, maybe you were molested, and you don't know what love really looks like, and then you have to heal from all that trauma, and you don't start the healing process until you realize that you need to heal. And typically you don't realize that you need to heal until you're a young adult, in your adolescence, or when you're a full-blown adult. So it's a huge journey that takes up a lot of your natural life. And that's why I feel that so many people that don't engage in mental health, and they don't engage in getting healthy up here, that they just find themselves in situations where they're failing, and then they wonder why things are happening, and then what you said earlier, you get hopeless, and you just start believing the lie that, oh my gosh, I'm never gonna find anyone.
That's how I felt. And then JR came literally like quicker than I thought, because at that point I was like, okay, God, I give up. I'm just gonna surrender my whole being to you. I'm gonna stop dating. I'm not gonna focus on anybody. And then JR was like, let's go out, let's date, let's do this. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I think I tried to push him away. But I think I tried to push him away. And I think, like you were saying earlier, you know, we subconsciously carry these things throughout our life, and then we don't address them until we get older. Like, every little thing that we go through becomes like almost like a domino effect, and it like builds up over our lifetime. And then we have like these triggers or these trauma things that we go through. And they either push people away or they carry over into relationships.
Because you have these scars and you're hurt. And I think that's when you are healing and you're not fully healed, and you have these scars, you have these wounds, you're going to bleed on someone that never cut you. You know what I'm saying? And then unfortunately you bring on that stuff onto the person that you've met, and he has no idea what you've gone through. And sometimes it's hard to open up to someone new about your stuff, about your traumas, about your life even, you know, because you feel that you may be judged in a sense, you know?
I think it's just really important to be open with whoever you're dating or talking to or hanging out with, because I felt like I always was with JR. Like, when I was pushing him away, I was like, because of this, or, you know, I've gone through this, and, you know, I was always really upfront with him, just to like make him aware of the relationships that I have gone through that have really hurt me and caused trauma in my life.
I mean, that's so important, because your brain is such a muscle that's, you know, neglected, and we don't do it by design. It's just who we are as humans. We're all about the physical, so we have to look good. It doesn't really, your internal organs are not exposed for the world to see, so you kind of by default neglect your mental health, neglect what's inside, you know, and you just want to present this beautiful, you know, frame for someone to look at you and give you a bit of attention and stuff like that. I mean, it's tough. I always been on the side of mental health. Like everybody that knows me pretty much thinks that I'm a mental health advocate, and I wear that badge proudly. I've had, as I told you before, I've had my therapist here on the show to talk about mental health. But I think that should be a conversation that should be had with people. Like, hey, how is your mental health? How's your soul? You know, how's those things? How's your prayer life? How's your devotional life? Because I think all that ties into your mental health. It ties into your spirituality, and if you are all around, working on that and sharpening yourself on that, and getting yourself spiritually fit, emotionally fit, just like how we try to get ourselves physically fit. For all you CrossFitters out there and your gym heads out there, you guys love to go to the gym. You guys love to go to your CrossFit hot boxes, and do your thing to look good, to feel good, and stuff like that. We should definitely carry ourselves that way when it comes to our spiritual life or spiritual health and our mental health. Because it was never talked about when I was growing up. I don't know if it was not something that was really talked about when you were growing up.
I don't think so. I feel like my mom was always the type to be like, oh, just push through it, get through it, like, you're tough, like. Yeah. And so I kind of had this tough mentality of like, I got it, I'll take care of myself, like, whatever hurts me, like, I'll just kind of shove it down. And
the first thing a therapist will tell you is not to suppress. Yeah. Don't suppress. Don't suppress.
And so I think that's what I did throughout, like, all this hurt. And then it's kind of, like, built up throughout my life. And, I think it is really good to talk about things. And I think this generation, one of the few good things about it is that people do talk more. And therapy is becoming more of, like, an okay thing, because when I was younger, I thought people who went to therapy were crazy.
Me too. Or they were wussies. Yeah. With the P in the front. JR knows what I'm talking about. But I don't want to make fun, but like that's what it was. Like that stigma was, if you don't, like, guys, what? I'm not going to go to a therapist. I'm not crazy, or I'm not.
Don't talk about your feelings.
I'm not soft. Yeah. But I think it takes a braver man to sit on a couch and talk about what they're going through to a person that doesn't know you from a hole in the wall. I think that it takes a true man, and it's more brave and bold to do that versus I'm a man and pound your chest and be like, no, I'm good. Yeah. But in reality, you're not. Yeah. You're going to be in the fetal position in private where no one's around, crying, thinking about God knows what. Yeah. I know when I was in a really bad, dark place, I was literally like, in a place where life wasn't worth living, kind of thing. And a human being should never feel that way. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, your life matters, and you matter in this world. Yeah. Your talents are your talents, and if you feel like you don't have a talent, get around some people that'll find it in you. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So community is great. Speaking of community, we can segue through that. Right. I know that me and you kind of stand on the same playing field when it comes to community. I think being around a good community does help with your growth. What do you feel about that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like a lot of the times when we're going through like tough things, our natural reaction is to isolate ourselves, and not really want to be around other people. But I think the best thing to do is to get into a community. Like for me, one of the things I'm doing right now is I have a freedom group that I'm going through right now, which is awesome. And I've been meeting a lot of new girls, and they're like-minded, like myself. They're Christian women who are going to keep me on the right path, and they're kind of opening my eyes to like, oh, that's something I've never thought about. People who are going to kind of enlighten you and give you wisdom and bring like joy into your life. Like the people you surround yourself with is such a big deal. You don't want to surround yourself with the wrong group.
Oh yeah, because I know how that story ends when I surround myself with the wrong crowd, with the wrong people that are just doing the wrong things. I call those people that are the ones that are here for a good time and not a long time. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's fun, because sin is not sin if it's not fun. You know what I'm saying? I heard a pastor say that once, and I don't remember who it was, but I got it off off of that pastor. Like, and it made, when I heard it, it made sense.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, like, I guess that's why it's sin, because it's fun
Yeah.
to sin. Like, sin is it's counterfeit. It looks.
It is a counterfeit.
It is a counterfeit pleasure. It is a counterfeit way of seeing a good time, but it is counterfeit. It looks shiny, but it stinks.
Well, one of the things that we've been talking about in my freedom group is for every truth in life, the devil has a counterfeit. And the same thing with like sin. What the devil will do is make like the tree of life, you know, that's one of the things we talk about. The devil will be like, or the enemy, whatever. Well, but did God really say this? Like, why would he withhold something from you? But a lot of the times, like, God isn't trying to keep something from us. God is trying to protect us. Like, you know, like sex before marriage. One of the girls in there today was like, you know, my friend, she was talking about like, I just don't get it. You know, like everyone does it. But that's the thing, like just because everyone is doing it doesn't mean it's okay. Like literally the Bible says don't follow the patterns of this world. And I think a lot of the people look at that, and I used to personally myself, like I'd be like, what? I can have sex? Like who, like,
because you feel like you're not hurting anyone.
Yeah, but really it is like a lot of the things that God's like, don't do this. It's not really don't do this. It's more so like, hey, like you have a choice, like you have free will, but I'm saying this to protect you. It's not to like leave you from doing something that you would enjoy doing. Yeah,
because God did create sex, and He created sex for us to find pleasure, and we're the only species that find sex pleasurable.
Yeah.
All other species do it for procreation, to keep their lineage going, to keep their species thriving, but we're the only species that finds it pleasurable.
Yeah.
And God created it that way. He designed it that way. So he didn't create sex for us to fail at. He created sex for us to thrive at.
Yeah.
You know, and but he wanted to harness that power.
Yeah.
And in order for us to harness that power, we would have to do it within the confines of a covenant met by one man, one woman, binded together through matrimony and through Christ.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that it'll be pure. And a lot of us will look at that and it's like trying to read Chinese. Like, what? What does that mean? How do I do it? How am I, like, give me practical ways of, because I remember, you know, trying to wrap my head around it, you know, and I still, you know, kind of have struggled with that.
Yeah.
Like, how, give me something practical. You know what I'm saying? Like, what's a practical way of staying pure and being pure and just being one with God. You know, like I know that I've heard multiple pastors say, hey, if you find yourself single, this is the perfect time for you to build yourself. Start from the ground up. You know, stay pure. You know, find your talents. If you're brokenhearted and you need to heal, use the time that you are single and not bothered by anyone to, you know, heal. And I do think that in the time of singleness, when you are committed to build yourself, you will find it very, very nourishing to yourself. Like you'll find, you know what I'm saying? Like you'll find like, wow, I found this side of me that I never knew I had.
It's
kind
really
of thing.
powerful, honestly, especially when you're using your singleness to like strengthen your relationship with Christ. I mean, the past like few years before I met JR, I was really in this like weird kind of teetering place of I'm doing what I want, I'm doing what God wants.
Yeah.
And when I finally got to the place of like, wow, I'm gonna like have my confidence like in Christ and do what He wants me to do and like not really care and kind of found myself, like I, you know, it was just awesome. Yeah,
for sure. And like you, going back to your community, right?
Yeah.
And you just mentioned that you're in a group.
Yeah.
A women's group or a freedom group.
Yeah, freedom women's group.
Okay.
Women's freedom.
So that's a little bit countercultural, right? Because a lot of women in the world are looked as competition, and they get catty.
Yeah.
And there isn't much women empowerment, although some movements will tend to portray that, but behind closed doors, they're catty. They find themselves as being competition to one another, and they're really not empowering one another.
Yeah.
But with us in the Christian realm, we try to, at least with men, we try to get together as men to fight the good fight, to fight the fight but not one another, because the Bible says that we're not fighting flesh and bone. We're fighting wicked spirits and principalities that we can't see, because they
rulers of this world.
Yeah, because they operate in this spiritual realm that we cannot see physically, but there's definitely stuff going around that we can't see. So how has that been? Like, how is it that you like? First of all, I'm sure this goes without saying, this is more of a rhetorical question, but do you feel more empowered when you were in a good group of women?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, when I'm by myself, I feel like that leaves more room for like attacks, you know, and it's better to be in that community where you have people like building you up, because nobody is perfect. Nobody's going to be like happy all the time. Nobody's going to feel like reading their Bible every day. And so when you have those people around you, like encouraging you to do those things and why you're doing those things and lifting you up, like it's very needed.
Yeah, it's so important. I think I'm in a men's group. We meet up Monday nights, and I so realized that I needed it.
Yeah.
Because I used to be in a group years ago, and before COVID actually, and then COVID happened and things just kind of stopped.
Yeah.
And then I got lazy, and a lot of people got lazy. They got very, very comfortable streaming stuff, not going to movie theaters anymore. It's like, I could watch a movie on a streaming platform now. I don't have to go to a movie theater. Like, that started becoming a thing.
Yeah.
Where we weren't leaving our homes even after the world kind of started slowly opening up, because now all these streaming platforms, they are streaming their big blockbuster movies on their platforms. There's no, like, the theater is a dying breed. Like, there's not many theaters out there that are like popping, you know, like how they used to when we were in high school.
Yeah, which
you know?
I love the theater.
Yeah, the theater is such a good hangout, especially when you were a kid.
Yeah.
Or even like when you were a teenager or a high school kid, like that was like the hangout.
I love
you know?
the popcorn and the soda.
Yeah. So it was just like, it was a fun time. But now after COVID, it was just like everybody's to themselves. People weren't going to church because they got comfortable streaming it. It was just a weird time, you know, and we're just now getting out of it. You know what I'm saying? So I just felt like, hey, man, I remember when I was in a group that I was literally having a good time, but I was also growing in my faith. Yeah. And I was also being more intentional because people were holding me accountable to read a Bible verse. You know what I'm saying? So I think that it's so important to stay in community and being around those people that can hold you accountable and that you can also go to when you're going through some trials and tribulations that life may hit you with. Because I have like literally a short list of people that I can call and be like, yo, I'm dealing with some stuff and I'm feeling a kind of way.
Very short
like I need to talk to you. What's that?
A very short list for me.
Yeah, and how like do you, I'm sure you have your homegirls or your close friends that are now that are you the only married one of the tribe now?
Well, some of my friends, like a lot of my friends are married now.
Okay.
But I would actually say a lot of my friends are married more than single.
Okay, cool.
It's a good mixture, but I think more are married.
Yeah. Now, do you
stop?
Yeah, it stopped. Just started.
Yep.
Okay. Good go.
Okay.
And JR is right in the camera, by the way. So shouts to JR. Let's go. But yeah, like, do you find? I always found it fascinating that like I hear stories where, oh man, now that I'm married, all my single friends come to me for marital advice. Do you find yourself with friends kind of like reaching out for advice, or even have girl talk? Do you believe in girl talk?
Yes.
Do you have girl talk?
Girl talk is good. I think that like for me, girl talk has been a little bit less this season of my life because like a lot of my friends judged me for getting married so quickly. Oh. So I've actually
let's talk about that.
Yeah, I've actually lost a few friendships.
If you don't mind sharing that.
No, not at all. I mean, I just think that sometimes God removes people from your life for a reason. And I had this one group of girlfriends, and I don't know if it was because I got engaged so quickly or what it was, but they started to treat me differently. And our relationships never like recovered from that. There's probably like 2 people from the group that.
And not to interrupt you, but your wedding was off the hook.
It was the best.
It was lit. It was so fun. I think it was the happiest I've seen both of you guys.
Yeah.
Like JR was like smiling ear to ear.
Yeah.
He just looked so freaking happy, man. And I had such a great time. It felt like a reunion because I saw all of
All of our friends.
All
were
our
there.
friends,
I wish we could relive it.
it was like a church
Every
family reunion. It was insane.
Yeah, it
and-
was so much fun.
But anywho, continue.
Yeah, but so that was hard because a lot of people that I thought would be just like there for me and supporting me in that season kind of turned their back on me. And so I felt like I kind of tried to regain those friendships throughout the year up until well, actually, we weren't really engaged that long, but that year when we got married, and then like after we got married, and I tried to do things and reach out, but I was also hurt myself because I'm like, well, what did I do to kind of get treated this way?
Right.
So I pulled back away, and then I think that they started to take like more offense from me pulling away, but I was just hurt.
Right.
And so those friendships never really mended. I mean, I've always been here like, if they want to come back around, if it's meant to be, like, you know, God will put them in my life. But I feel like I've kind of done all I can do.
And I definitely find that admirable that that's a very mature way to deal with those things, because a lot of people would try to hold that and get bitter over it and hold a grudge over it, and that'll cause friction. And then it'll be a lingering thing where you find yourself having this back and forth with your friends in regards to all that stuff. But it sounds to me that you handled it pretty honorable, you know?
I think so. I mean, obviously, like, I'm not perfect, and I tried to in the best way, but you know, we're all human, and like I said, if God wants them to be in my life, they will be, and like I'm here with open arms if they want to be my friend.
That's
but
so good.
It's like you can't make people
like you
want to be around you. Yeah, exactly. And it gets to a point of like, it does start to affect your mental health.
Right.
And I think just a lot of things happened when me and JR got engaged to where it really affected me, and I'm like, wow, like a lot of people that I thought would have been here to support me aren't. People that were really close to me too. And so I think within that time, that kind of affected my mental health a lot, and it's made me kind of like withdraw from people. But that's why community is so important, because when you feel like you want to withdraw, because people will hurt you, you have to just keep
and hurt people
away.
Do hurt people.
Exactly.
And I've been on both sides of those unfortunately I've been personally on both sides of that spectrum. I've been hurt years ago by a hurt person. I didn't know that person was hurting till after the fact, but I was hurt by that person because that person was hurting and dealing with some stuff that I didn't have no idea that person was dealing with. And then recently I got hurt, so I started hurting back by, you know, acting out of character, by getting emotional, by being led by my anger and by my emotions, and then involving other people in the mix that shouldn't be. It's not fair for those friends to get involved because of my, you know, selfishness, because of my hurt, because of me trying to prove a point. I started involving other parties in the mix when it should have just been me and that person, you know, dealing with one another, and have a one-on-one and talk about it and see if we could, you know, let bygones be bygones and agree to disagree. But I didn't do that because I was so hurt. I was very emotional, and, you know, I didn't realize it until after the fact, after the damage was done, and after that person didn't want anything to do with me, and it was just like, when the dust settled and I realized what I've done, I was like, crap, that's not the godly thing for me to do. That's not what Jesus wanted me to act. Like I got out of character, and I look like a hypocrite. And sometimes when you do hypocritical things, you start believing that lie. It's like, yeah, you are a hypocrite. You are a fraud. You're not a man of God. And then these lies start flooding my head, and then it puts you in a place and in a position mentally where you're hurting and trying to recoup from that. And I mean, to avoid all that, ladies and gentlemen, try to be real with yourself, and then just try to, you know, really be spirit-led when it comes to conflict. Definitely. In order to handle conflict, I think you have to put God in front of it, because when you put your heart in front of it, you're going to go all over the place, and you're going to end up hurting yourself and others.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Like, first thing, obviously, is put God in front of it, and But I think another important thing to know is like we're all human, you know, we're all gonna kind of lead with our emotions sometimes because it's just part of being human.
Yeah.
And I think another part of being a Christian is giving people grace
Right.
who do make mistakes because that's just part of being a human.
Right.
And I think some people who like aren't Christians, they don't
Understand
get
that.
They don't understand that. And that's another thing we talked about in Freedom today is like when you're not spirit led, like you don't understand like what the spirit would do. So people don't always want to give you grace in those situations. But not saying that it's right to do things and like lead with emotions, but just another important thing to remember is we're all human and like you said, most importantly, try to lead with the spirit.
And I remember in the past, like I would get even frustrated when people weren't giving me that grace. Like I felt like I was entitled of that grace, but unfortunately you can't make people give you grace. And so that's also a challenge to navigate through that, because it's like, hey, I am sorry.
Yeah.
I want to ask for forgiveness. I want to make it right. I want to reconcile. And sometimes you don't have to reconcile, but for sure you want to be forgiven.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because forgiveness and reconciliation are two different things. It's great to forgive. It's awesome though to reconcile and patch things up and move forward. But if you can't reconcile with someone, at least have the opportunity to ask for forgiveness, or if you're the other party, to give forgiveness. You don't necessarily have to forgive and reconcile if you feel that it's something out of your reach and you can't reconcile because maybe that person is so toxic that you want to protect yourself. So that person can get right, and they have to, you know, there's certain situations where you have to allow that person to get right just to protect your mental health and also protect your heart. But it's easier said than done, because when it's happening in real time, especially with me, that since I was a kid, I dealt with a lot of anger issues. I was an angry kid because my dad was a yeller, and I picked that up from my dad. He was a very angry, abrupt person. Like he led with an iron fist. He was a man's man, and he liked to yell to get a point across. And I picked that up, and then I became an angry kid. And then that angry kid became an angry young adult, and that angry young adult started getting into adult situations, and I was getting into some trouble. And so I would get in trouble with relationships. You know, my dating life was kind of like up and down, because I would have good seasons, and then I would have really bad seasons where I'm, you know, punching through the sheetrock. So it's important for you to kind of realize where you pick these mannerisms from, and where you pick these characteristics from. And it's typically you pick them up from whoever's around you, and whoever's around you is the one that's raising you. So when you realize, like, wow, I got that from my dad, but my dad got that from his dad, and his dad got it from him. So it's a vicious cycle that you have to kind of like break. And the only way that you can get there is by therapy or some form of therapy. Whatever's therapeutic for you, however you're going to navigate through it to find yourself and have this epiphany, like that light bulb kind of turns on your head, and you realize, like, wow, I'm a little bit like my mom.
And I mean, I think it sounds kind of like cliche, but like just taking it to God and being like, hey, like, help me with this, you know, like you said, once you realize like you inherited it from your mom or your dad or
that's half the battle.
Somebody in your family, like being like, okay, well, how do I address this to not be like that and break that pattern? Because I mean, there's so many people that I know whose parents struggle with like alcohol or, like you said, anger. And like I have this one friend, Chris, and his dad was an alcoholic, and he's like, Sarah, like, I don't know if I'll be able to break the cycle. And like I'm like, the only way you're gonna be able to break that is God, you know, like something that's so much out of your control. Like you have to give it to God first, and then he'll show you what to do with it. I feel like that's why so many people who go to like those addiction programs, they always have like a higher power to like answer to, because if you don't have anything outside
of you,
like holding you accountable, like what's gonna make you want to break that cycle, you know?
That's like the incentive, I feel like. And I had some alcoholism in my family too. My brother really dipped into that with substance abuse and alcohol, and he spun out of control, and because of his recklessness, he's in prison, and I'm, you know, taking care of his kids now. But everyone has to go through a Jesus moment.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And that's my brother's story. That's my brother's Jesus moment. He's gonna be home soon. He'll have a story to tell. And I believe that God's doing a work in him, because now he's talking Jesus on over the phone with me.
Wow.
He said that he's met this guy that works at the prison chapel, and now he's going to services on Thursdays and Saturdays. And so that's an amazing thing. Unfortunately, he took that route, or it took him to get to him through that trajectory, but God works in so many different ways. And that was obviously a prayer that my mom had for my brother. Like, hey, I want my son, my youngest, because he's younger than me, to encounter the Lord, to get close to God, to love the Lord. And weird to say, but that's kind of an answered prayer, you know? But it's funny how you mention alcoholism, because alcoholism is a disease.
Yeah.
And people sometimes say, no, it's not. It's a choice. You chose to do that. Yes, it is a choice, but all things that we do in life are choices, and some choices turn into diseases and turns into habits. You know what I'm saying? So I think that the choices that we make. So yes, so everything is choices. And I cringe every time people would say, oh, but that's a choice that they made. They that's the bed that they made. They have to sleep in it now. But like, we all make choices that leads to a destination, and that destination led that person into alcoholism, which alcoholism is a disease. Like, the reason why people, not the experts and doctors, would say it's a disease is because when you come off of it, like, you go through a physical withdrawal, and it's painful, and your body craves it, and you come into into a state of withdrawal, which is pretty horrific, So I mean, life is full of choices, and we have to choose to love, because Jesus chose to love us by hanging on the cross. That was definitely not an emotion that he was feeling. It was definitely a choice. So he chose to love. We have to, act accordingly as men and women of God, and we have to choose to love as well, and walk in love and walk in that grace.
Yeah, it's not based upon your emotions. It's a choice that you make. Like, you're not always going to feel like doing certain things, but if you know, like, in your heart that is what you want to do, you want to have a relationship with Christ, you want to follow his ways of living and seek his kingdom, like, you just have to do it regardless of what your flesh is trying to tell you to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think men and women, deal with similar and also different, struggles. Men tend to think blue, women think pink, but and we are hardwired differently, but we all do have struggles. Men struggle with different things that women do. You know what I'm saying? A lot of women. I found out through like research and just talking to my therapist and stuff like that women also struggle with pornography. The percentages obviously favor the men, because men are more visual creatures. But I was like shocked. I was wow, the women actually struggle with pornography. But it just to show you that women, just because you're a woman, you're not exempt from certain struggles.
I think with that, like, a lot of it has to do with like the culture we live in too, where things are like just so easy, it seems like, to come by, and that's where you have to be a lot stronger and like not allowing certain things around you. Like, if social media or something is a trigger for you, like, make sure that you don't have that in your life, like, make sure you're not setting yourself up to fail. Yeah,
for sure. I think when you said social media, it's like, wow, we actually live in like an era where it's almost like driven by social media. Like, businesses are now picking up on it. They have social media platforms. Entrepreneurs have social media platforms. Public speakers, public figures, everybody has I have you have a social media platform to so everything is so accessible. And we have to be mindful of that, because I am kind of like helping raise my brother's kids, and my nephew is 8 years old, and he is on devices now. He doesn't have a cell phone yet, and we're gonna keep it that way for another while. But he has a the iPad thing, and then he has another device too. and he's into Roblox now and watching YouTube videos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you just got to be mindful of that because you just don't know what kids may come across, even on YouTube. And YouTube may seem and feel like an innocent thing, but there's some crazy weirdo stuff happening on YouTube too.
Oh, for sure. And I just feel like it's so much harder with society nowadays and like all the technology we have to like keep kids innocent, you know? And I think that's really, I mean, I'm not a parent yet, so I can't speak for parents, but I think that's just like your role as a parent to kind of monitor them and look after them and keep that innocence, because in this world today, it's very hard. It's very tough.
It's funny too, because I literally heard a parent say that technology and social media is stripping and robbing our kids' innocence. And to a certain degree, I think that's a true statement. Like, it is robbing, and if you're not careful anyway, and you're not monitoring that, it can rob a kid's innocence, slowly but surely.
I think it's changed, like, I feel like it's definitely affected the brain for children. I mean, I'm also not a psychologist, but just the things that kids do nowadays, like the way they interact versus when I was a kid, you know, like we went outside and we played. And, you know, we went to friends' houses and we didn't sit on the computer, we didn't sit on a tablet, like we actually did activities, like we actually used, I feel like you're using different sides of your brain. Again, not a doctor or anything, but like it's just a very different world that we live in, you know? And so I feel like social media too, like one thing that is interesting, I feel like there's so much more like anxiety now with people in general and young kids. And that was one thing that my therapist said, is just like the number has skyrocketed, especially after COVID. And I do believe
the suicide rate increased too. And the scary statistic of that is that the age has gotten younger. Like more younger kids are committed suicide. Which hurts me because like I'm no stranger to that. And I've had, you know, close friends of mine growing up, you know, commit suicide and stuff like that. That's why I cringed a little bit and I struggled with watching 13 Reasons Why on Netflix, because it was about the girl's story
I didn't see it.
who committed suicide and left like cassette tapes for all of her like peers in school and stuff like that. And so I cringed a little bit. I struggled watching it, but it's scary. It's pretty scary to read that and read that statistic that this generation seeing more younger kids committing suicide than it was when our parents were growing up. It was taboo to even hear about a child taking their life. So
it's sad.
That's why I always say, and I know I sound like a broken record, but I will forever sound like a broken record when it comes to advocating for mental health. I think that's something that we should not neglect, because if we're not neglecting the way we appear externally, we shouldn't neglect our internal stuff neither, because it's so important. It's instrumental for your growth too, because you can't grow spiritually if your mental is not right.
Exactly. You know? And I just think like parents need to be like open to talking with their kids and listening to their kids. And I just feel like, again, with everything in the world, it's like everyone's so closed off from each other. You know, like kids come home and you put them on their tablet or they're playing video games, and it's like,
and us as adults do it too, though. Like exactly. my parents hate it, like when I'm like this, and then my dad's trying to talk to me, and he's like, "Son," I'm like, yeah, I'm listening. He's like, "No, you're not. Put the phone down." And I'm like, "All right, Dad." So
it's hard.
A family when we have family gatherings, I like my aunt's house because she has like the house because she has a pretty big house, so everybody gathers there. It's literally requested to put your phones in this little basket thing, so all of us can interact and catch up, because we don't get to see certain family members because of life and our schedule. So this should be a time to be off your devices and actually catch up on things, hang out, see how everyone's doing, see how your cousins are doing, and catch up on life. You can't do that when you're so preoccupied with your phone and you're taking pictures and you're taking stuff for the gram, and you want to do the selfies for the gram, but you're not really interacting with your family. And my aunt's like that's her pet peeve. She's like, get off your phones. Like, and it's important too, because like, our relationships with our parents were a little different when we were younger, but now that we're older, our relationship or our communication, if you have a relationship with your parents, should be we should be more mindful and more respectful when it comes to spending time with your. I don't know how your relationship is with your parents. Are your parents in the state of Florida?
Yeah, I'm really close with them. They actually moved down like a year ago from Ohio.
Oh, okay, cool. Are they Ohio Buckeyes?
No, they're not like sports
No,
people.
they're not sports people.
My dad, it's so funny. He's like, I mean, like he's a manly guy. And he does concrete work, but he like doesn't care for sports. Never has. Like I've never been in a home where it's like, you know, like the dads are like Sunday, gotta watch football. I don't even think JR's like that, and he played football.
Yeah, because JR played football for
he
high school.
But he doesn't even care about watching football, which I'm like, okay.
So you do have a good communication with your mom.
Close.
And growing up too, you had pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. I mean, I think like I said with my mom, it was a little like me and my mom were close, but it was a different relationship. I'm realizing now that I'm older, where like her mentality of like just be strong, just like push through it type thing, where it's like in those certain moments it would have been nice for her to be like, well, you know, what's really going on, because there were times where like I wanted to talk to her, but I felt like she was just gonna tell me like, oh, get over it, you know.
Yeah, true. I mean, I had like a reality check years ago. I had a friend of mine who grew up in a broken home and really didn't have a father figure, and he missed that forever. Like he always talked about it. He's like, yo, you don't understand. Like I as a kid, I always wanted my dad to show up for my games, and all my friends had their dads that showed up to their games. I felt like I was the only one that didn't have a father show up to their baseball games and stuff like. And he struggled with that, you know. And here we are as I think we were freshmen in college, and we were having a conversation about it, and it like touched me, because I'm like, damn, like I take my parents for granted. Here I am, blessed to have both my parents under the same roof, and this guy's pouring his heart out about having a lack of a father, and I'm over here complaining about my dad. And he kind of like was like, yo, dude, like at least you got a dad. And he just kind of like laid it out on me, you know, in a very loving and respectful way. He wasn't like laying it in on me kind of thing, but it's so crazy. Like I had multiple friends who came up in broken homes, so it kind of shifted perspective. Like, wow, I feel blessed. I have both my parents. Thank God for that. So I don't know if you had friends that came up from broken homes or anything like that, but I feel like that's such an important thing that's overlooked too. Like fathers in the house, especially in a Christian home, is so important.
Yeah, definitely. It affects the child a lot, especially when their parents are separated. And it's funny that you say that, like you had so many friends who they grew up in broken homes. When JR and I went to go get like our wedding venue, the vendor, she was like, so who am I putting down for mom and dad? Are like both of your parents still married? And she's like, that's crazy, because like in this world, like normally one side, like the husband, like his parents are split up or you know, whatever. And she's like, you just don't really see that much anymore, where both parents are still together.
It's scary because that it's normalized that people don't have parents that are together. That's become the norm, and that's a scary thing.
It's very scary.
So it's like I'm just very, very, very grateful for having parents, and I'm very grateful for having you.
Oh, thank you.
This was a very fun.
It was so fun.
Yeah, it's a fun little, and it's I feel like dialogue is definitely needed with our generation, because I feel like a lot of us shy away from having real conversations, because sometimes people are afraid to have real conversations because they don't want to open up, and they don't want to be vulnerable because they feel that they're going to be judged because because their pain looks a little bit different than our pain. But once you start opening up to people and realizing like, hey, everyone had a story or has a story. Everybody came up from something. Everybody overcame something. like how you talk a lot about in your show, like we all overcome some waves,
Yep.
in life and stuff like that. And the people that you're going to be having in your show, they're going to share a lot of stuff that they overcame and stuff like that. So, and it's so good to see someone doing the things that I'm doing, like a fellow podcaster, I could call you now.
Right? That's awesome.
Yeah, and like it's really good to have dialogue and talk about these things, because that in itself is therapeutic, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. It's so nice to have that, because like I said, when I was younger, all this stuff was like
taboo. Almost.
It's like you're crazy, but now it's nice to have these things. So if you don't have somebody to go to,
right,
you can turn this on and you could be like, okay, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's one of the biggest lies, is like, you're alone, there's something wrong with you.
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with you. Everyone goes through things. That's part of being a human,
Yeah.
And so I just think that's so important for people to know that.
Yes, that is so important. And I love your show, by the way.
Thank you.
I can't wait to go back.
Yes.
I'll definitely we'll link up soon.
Yeah.
I'd love to be back on your show, and
That'd be
we could
great.
chop it up and talk about stuff, and talk about the beach cleanups that are coming soon.
Heck yeah,
Can't
November
wait.
5th.
So before you go, do you just want to share your stuff so I can put it on the platform and just tell the people what you do? And
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So my company is called Through the Waves. We have a podcast that we just launched. We're up to, I believe, episode 9 now.
hey, that deserves a round of applause.
And like Javi said, and like Javi said, we talk about waves that you go through, and we have people on just like he has me on, and they just talk their waves, because everyone has different waves, like addiction, mental health, loneliness, grief, whatever it
Depression,
may be. Yeah, everything. So if you would like to check us out, we have a YouTube channel, Through the Waves, or we have Instagram, Through the Waves Florida, and we have all of our links on there. You can listen on
And I'll
numerous
share the links
platforms.
on the description below
Yeah,
for you guys.
So
So
we'd love to have you guys.
yeah. So reach out if you guys are in the Palm Beach area, just like how you guys know we are in the Palm Beach County area, and you want to reach out to either myself or Sarah. We love to talk to you, even if it's just dialogue behind the scenes. You don't necessarily have to be in front of a camera. We don't expect everyone to be in front of the camera, but I've had conversations behind the scenes where people are shy to come on the show.
Yeah.
But I've actually had I hate to call it consultations, because I don't find myself being a professional, but it's literally, that's what it felt like.
You're
Like
someone
I was,
people can talk to.
yeah, I was just having, behind the scene conversations, and I would exchange my emails, and we'll email each other, and it's so cool to be able to be there for someone when they're struggling with whatever it is that they're struggling with. So it's really, really cool. So I'll leave the links for Sarah's platforms on the description below for you YouTube faithful viewers. And again, guys, if you're new to the show, we are both on all digital platforms, and I'll leave the descriptions below. I am a weekly show. I try, my schedule's not, when my schedule allows me, I try to have an episode every Wednesday, but sometimes it'll come out Fridays. But I'll try my best to do every Wednesday. New content, new creation, new content, and new TikTok clips on pretty much on a weekly basis. So anything helps, guys. She's getting to know early on that sharing, liking, subscribing, it helps with the algorithm. It really does help us content creators with the algorithm. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for liking. Thank you for commenting in advance, because I know that's what you're going to do now, guys. So we thank you. We'll see you till next time. Peace.